together to speak with us and address concerns of the community. It is, I think, a terrific thing that you're doing. So thank you both very much. We're so happy to have you here.
Thank you for the invitation.
That's wonderful. Couldn't do it without you guys. So thank you. Great. So with that, we'll begin. Maybe we'd like to start with questions. And sir, would you like to start? Maybe we can go around this way and begin.
Okay, I have a question.
Yes.
I have a hard time hearing, and this makes it hard for me to speak. But I do my own appeals. I do the comparables and all that. I've been doing that for the last 10, 15 years. About 10 years ago, when I used to do the appeals, you put the subject class, the same neighborhood, the exterior, and similar square size. And then it gives you a whole list, like about 40 pages with about 25 properties on each one. 10, 15 years ago, when I used to do it, the assessed value used to be from the lowest to the highest. Once I got to the point where the assessed value was higher than mine, it didn't pay for me to look beyond it. Nowadays, when I do it, I get the same thing, but the assessed value is all random. So it forces me to go through all 40 or 50 pages, and why it discouraged people to do that, because I go through all of them and I spend like about 2 or 3 hours going through each one, the whole list. When before, all I had to do was go through, from the lowest to the highest. Once it got to the point where my property was, I didn't have to go any further. I mean, why did it change? So it makes it harder for somebody to try to do their own appeal.
When did you say it changed?
When
did you say it changed? How long?
I would think about 10 years ago. I mean, I have been complaining to the assessors when I go down there and I say, why did they change it? And I also spoke to, who's the Cook County assessor? I don't know how to pronounce the name, Frisbee or
Fritz K.
Okay. I left a message and one of his, somebody called me back and I suggested that it be put back to the way it was before. I don't know if it's going to be done or not, but I thought I'd come over here and try and get somebody here to work on it. Because it makes it easier for people, instead of looking through all 40 pages, just look onto the assessed value where your property is. You don't have to go any further. I would also think it makes the work easier for you, because I've been able to get my appeals down when I do my own assessment, okay? If those properties that I show are lower than mine and you lower my property value, that would be like a red flag for you to look at those properties and see, why was I able to reduce my property with these? Maybe those were low, so maybe you have to look into their property and see if they should have been higher or mine should have been where it was. But I really think that they should put the assessed value now from the lowest to the highest, not put them all random, so, forcing the person to look through every page.
Well, I think I speak for both Commissioner Degnen and I when I say we want it to be easy, because we want this to be a benefit to all people like you who take the time to look at the information.
But they discourage somebody to look through them, because if I got to look through 40 pages, it takes a lot of time.
So Commissioner Degnen and I will contact Fritz K. and we'll ask him directly why it happened, if he can change it to.
It was about 10 years ago.
He's only been there a couple of years,
It was about 10 years ago that I think this got changed.
Can you give us your contact information? Do you have an email address or a phone number so we can call you? Can you write that down and give it to me? And my office will call you. There might be, when they have these databases, there might be a sort functionality that's not enabled, and that all they have to do is change that sort functionality. We have to ask them
I try to look all over the place, trying to get that thing, the assessed value.
Yeah, we just need to see how. So sometimes, when you go look at something, you can sort from high to low or low to high.
Right, but there was no way I could do it anymore. There was no way before there was.
I just think they might have that on the back end of their database where they could then they can put that functionality on. I don't know. You might know if they had a new database system that was put into place in the last 10 years. I know right now they're starting with that cyber technology stuff to have a new database to have more functionality. So also will ask about if it's possible, if it is possible, if they'd be willing to put it back.
Yeah,
Wait,
because it
what?
was possible 10 years ago, but it
Well,
just,
I mean, they might, technology runs so fast that they get new technology in that office from time to time. It's like, boy,
but that's
maybe
that's
new
the one that
technology
discouraged
doesn't have
people to
that
do their
functionality.
own appeal because not too many people want to go through 40 pages looking at 25 properties on each one.
Okay, I think we both see your point.
Yeah.
So let us find out from that office because Fritz is separately elected and he has really the decision-making authority on that.
Okay.
Would you mind putting your address down too? So you probably don't know your PIN number, do you?
Offhand, no.
All right, we'll look it up. Okay, your question.
Who wants to go next?
Okay, can I take my mask off since I'm far enough away? No? Okay. My name is Joanne Becker and I sent in a question. I have lived in the city over 40 years and I happen to have a master's degree from the University of Denver College of Law in Judicial Administration Management. And I was hired by the chief criminal judge after I graduated from Peoria County to automate their criminal court records, which I did in 24 months. And I got all kinds of kudos from the sheriff, from the prosecutor and everything. And a lot happens that you've got to get involvement of the stakeholders, because as you know, a criminal case has like 5 people have to show up the same day, the same time, in the same courtroom. And so, and I've approached our current clerk of the courts and she's never done anything, although I know one of the key guys working for her. So since she's not running, and I haven't approached the Democratic candidate because the elections aren't done yet, but Jacob Meister knows her and he said he'd introduce me because I could be, when I was at the Justice Advisory Council meeting at the time, the chairman was Justice Burke. She said if they could automate the court's office, it would cut the budget in half, which is several $1 million. So what I plan to do is whoever gets elected, approach them and say, look, I don't want to do the work. I can coach and teach your people what they need to do, because part of what needs to be involved is participation of the judges, of all the people and, attorneys and other things like that. So what does the clerk of the court's budget come before the county board, or how is that done? Is there anything in the Cook County board that has to prove anything they do?
Well, so yes, that person is separately elected right now. Senator Iris Martinez is the person that is the Democratic candidate, and she presumptively would take over that spot if she's elected in November.
Right.
And so she obviously has the authority for operational control. So she decides what type of technologies to incorporate. We have to put it out through a request for procurement, through all our procurement rules. That does take, usually under a year to write the scope of work and get that procurement out. And then it takes time for that technology to be implemented.
Right.
Sometimes it's fast, sometimes it can take years and years and years. What she does is she is allowed to make financial decisions on behalf of her office, provided that they're less than $150,000? $150,000 or less. She can make that decision based on a line item in the budget. Annually, we approve.
Per year?
Annually, we approve her budget. So she has all these line items in her budget,
Okay.
whether it's personnel or technology or, pens and paper. So that line item gets it. So if she wants to spend that money, if it's over $150,000, she comes to us and says, I would like this new technology. We need it. We put out a procurement and it's going to cost $500,000. And we say, we think that's a good use. Yes, we agree with that. But a lot of the ownership and control hers, we financially or financial stewards to make sure that makes good financial sense for the county.
Yeah, because part of what I did in Peoria County was very open.
Oh, that's right. Excuse me, John, is that?
That's correct. I just wanted to add that the clerk of the court's office is a state office that we fund. So,
State office?
yeah, all the clerks of the court and the chief judge's office are offices of the state, but the county funds them.
You're right,
So
yeah.
the process is following exactly what the commission.
I know, I got a letter from the Supreme Court of Illinois, what a great job I did when I left and came up to Chicago, and I was told I'd never get a job in the courts because I didn't have the right political connection. So, my passion is as a former math teacher to teach people how to do things, and it's taxpayer money, so it saves me money. Because part of what is done is people focus on the technology. That's 20 or 30% of the work involved. The rest has to do with people and participation of that. So there are skill sets, because the guy I know who's worked there, and, you know, he told her when he was an employee that the problem they're having is that people don't have the skills to deal with automation, so she fired him. So he,
Fired this guy?
pardon?
She fired the guy you talked to?
Yes, right, yeah, I've known him for a number of years. He's a Black Government Without Flag, his leadership in community group. And so, you know, my passion is to help people develop the skills and competency and process it. I mean, I have a 4-hour meeting that teaches people how to design and run meetings that don't waste people's time. You know, people waste thousands of hours and money because they don't get the basic skills. You know, being super smart in your technical area is good, but if you don't have the other social and people skills to participate and to document things that are going on. And so, you know, as Illinois, she's now the she's head of the Illinois Supreme Court. She told me, she said, we could cut the budget in half if they just automate to do that. And so I wanted to know if you would be supportive of something like that for me to, you know, I want to do teaching and coaching. I don't want to do the consulting and all the technical. They don't have the skill sets to get this all done.
It seems that your plan is very innovative and will save money, so I'm sure we would be supportive of that. It can be shown.
Yeah.
The first hurdle is to convince the new clerk of the court. That
Right,
the
and Jacob Meissner, who I know,
Right.
we're both University of Wisconsin alumni, he said he would introduce me to her. I said, well, let's wait till after the election to, you know, be.
I like the idea until you said you went to Wisconsin.
Well, hey, look, I support a winning professional team.
I'm kidding. Whatever school you said, I was going to say that.
So, yeah, but that's.
But you need to get are you trying to contact Senator Martinez through Jacob Meister?
No, I'm gonna wait till after the election.
Good job,
You know,
yes.
that's what you need to do. There's a timing issue on when
Right.
certain things should happen and when not, and key stakeholders and stuff. Because I also know I met with the Chief Judge of Cook County. When I introduced myself and what I did, he said, would you please meet with me? He wanted to know about what I did. You know, I had the misdemeanor judge in Peoria County told me I knew the law better than some of his judges. And I said, well, thank you, Judge. But I said, if I'm going to computerize the information, you need to understand what it is. You're not being the judge.
Like you have everybody's support here.
Well, that's sort of what I'm looking for.
That's
What helps is people will say, yeah, she knows what she's talking about.
Right.
And then I worked in banking for 25 years when they first started automating banking. And you got to go up to CEOs and say, I need to give you some training. You know, I don't care how smart you are, how many degrees you are,
That's
people
not an
still
easy
need
job.
training on how to do things, especially in social skills. So that's my story and I'm sticking to it.
And it's a good one. Can we change?
I have another
question. I think you're so good.
Hold on.
Seriously.
Hold on, Sean. I didn't even notice it too much.
Are you sure? I tried to get you out of the sun, but it's not following you.
I'm pretending I'm at the beach.
Thank you, Joanne.
Well, thanks for the offer.
I have another question. You know, I've owned a unit that's more than 6 properties, which is considered commercial property. In order for me to appeal it, I had to give them the gross rent of the property from Schedule E. And if your taxes were more than 25%, it would be reduced because they wouldn't tax you more than 25% of the gross rent. So why are all these big commercial buildings downtown saying that you're invading their privacy by doing that? In order for me to get my taxes reduced on that 13-unit building, I had to give them my Schedule E with the gross rent. And then, like I said, if the taxes were more than 25%, it would be reduced because once it's at 25%, the county assessor won't tax you anymore. If it's lower than that, then it stays where it's at. If it's higher than that, then it will reduce it to 25%. But I don't understand why these commercial buildings are saying that you're invading their privacy and stuff like that when I had to do it. I mean, they said if I didn't do it, then they couldn't do anything about it. So if these people, you know, commercial buildings don't want to fill out that form and show their Schedule E for that building, then
I think they have to.
yeah, but they're saying they feel that they don't have to do that. They say that you're invading their privacy. The same thing, you know, I didn't want to show my Schedule E either, but I had to do it in order for my taxes to be, you know, looked at and to be considered to have it appealed.
So I think Chris Katie has said that the larger businesses, the commercial buildings in the downtown area are already so undervalued that they're underassessed. And
Right.
they're not, that's why they're not doing that. They're not challenging their taxes because their taxes are already so low.
Yeah, but then the ones that they raise up, they want to appeal them without showing their Schedule E for that building. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. So I think next year Chicago is going to be in the tri-annual assessment. Chicago's turn is next year. And so my understanding from Chris Katie's office is that they're going to take a very hard look based on the SEC filings that those bigger companies have to make for the larger buildings like the Sears Tower. And they'll reassess them based on publicly available information already. It's really the middle tier of commercial buildings and like commercial buildings that are on under $1 million, or those are the ones that I think Chris is trying to get more data based on this data modernization bill that he's trying to put through in Springfield.
Yeah, because I was reading something about River Casino.
Yeah.
They didn't want to be a value on the amount of money they brought in. They wanted to be a value on the side of their property. And I think some of it's supposed to be built on the water that's not supposed to be assessed, but they didn't want to be assessed on the gross money they brought. It was more on the side of the.
But so there's a difference in that, right? There's a difference in the way that the property owners can value their property based on how much could I sell this for right now. And then there's a difference of opinion about how much is that property really worth if it's income producing because you have tenants.
But generally, I would say a property is worth whatever it can bring in and whatever the net is. That's basically a good, valuation of what the property is worth, because by the net income, that is what people are willing, if they were to sell that property, that they would probably get, 10 times or 8 times whatever the.
But I think the argument is that it's speculative. Like some of the property owners are saying, well, I could lose this tenant, or the economy could be downturned, and that's not those things change so fast that they're saying that the assessment should be a long-term assessment to give the property owners predictability and how much their property taxes are going to cost annually, so they can build that into the way that they operate their business. So there's two, like the property owners are arguing one thing, and then the assessor's office is arguing something different.
Yeah, well, if they do it long-term, and then they put a lower assessment, then they can raise the prices up and they got these low assessments. I mean, they don't give me that opportunity of giving it long-term for me, then I can decide how, I can raise the rent and not worry about my taxes going up long-term either.
Who'd like to go next?
Fine, well,
You're fly on the wall, okay. All right. Okay, I'm gonna ask my question, and then I'll have the other
Well, do
questions.
you want to introduce yourself and say hello?
Oh, okay. Well,
Good idea.
hi guys. My name is Hector Vargas. I'm a small business owner, and I happened to move here in Porter Park about a couple of years ago, and we love the neighborhood, and I just wanted to I'd like to know everybody a little bit more, and just, get familiar with my surroundings. Naturally, COVID hit us a little hard, so I'm thinking about revamping, looking in the area for possible properties, that kind of thing. Again, small business, but just kind of trying to get to know the neighborhood and any opportunities might be available for small business, that kind of thing. Was your business moved to Portage Park or your residence? Well, no, we closed down. We were in Oakland Square. Oh, I see. So we kind of closed down a little hiatus, and because the type of thing that we do is very seasonal. We do marketing, promotions, that kind of thing. And I thought, well, since we're in the area, we're up here now, I might be looking around, seeing if there's a little office space we can get going again,
Well, thanks for joining us.
Oh, it's my pleasure, sir.
We want to.
Wait, why don't we just go back to
Yes,
the
question.
Thank you. Yeah, I have one for myself, and then I have one that others sent in. Okay, so my question is, is it possible, how can we create a mutual aid project for our community? Do you have any suggestions, or is it possible to get any assistance? I understand that other cities have been able to make successful project.
How would you define the HOA?
You know, it's a project where people say, I need work done at my house. I need to find some hours. And so it's kind of like a huge bartering thing, you know, people help each other out with what they have to offer.
I've seen that done on the Chamber of Commerce level a few times in the area.
Yeah.
There's your Chamber of Commerce here, which I know is pretty active.
George is, hey, George! George! He's the president.
Oh, the Chamber, okay.
Yeah.
I don't know if they do it, I'm just suggesting that.
Okay.
Someplace.
Do you think that would be something that the city or the, George, does the chamber do any mutual aid projects? Where people in the community, it's like they say, this is what I need, and other people say, this is what I can offer. It's a large bartering system. No.
Right now, we don't have it. We have member-to-member discounts. So like if business A is a member and they want to give a 5 or 10% discount or some kind of discount to other members,
Okay.
then that's an incentive for people. I mean, that's a big piece of the networking.
Okay.
And you know, we try to keep, because we're big into shop local, we would like the people that meet at meetings who get to know each other. Yeah, so the local dentist can go to the auto shop or go to the shoe repair place in
Right. I mean, it could even be something like, say, a restaurant needs a delivery person, the delivery person needs food. I mean, it can be, you know, whatever it is. It's like, but is that something like, so who do you,
Usually when it comes to the chambers, stuff like that, it goes through the city.
okay,
The city, George,
yeah,
I think, don't most chambers of commerce get some subsidy from the city?
our chamber doesn't. There's about 80 commercial business organizations, and then there's a small group that wants to just do industrial. They have contracts with the city. So, yeah, I mean, that's a lifeline to a lot of groups. I mean, so, you know, so we cut expenses to offset that, but,
okay.
yeah, I'm not sure exactly how the city would handle it.
Is that something though that like the city could assist with if it got, because it's a very, to make it successful, you have to have a lot of people involved and just be able to get the outreach and do that? Or is that not something that the county or?
Well, it's something the county hasn't done yet, but it might be a good conversation with our economic development people.
Okay.
Maybe have to share.
And
Thank you.
so she's the director of
She's exactly what I was going to talk.
Yeah, she's awesome.
Do you want me to contact her then? Should I contact her?
You can contact her and we can tell her you're calling.
Excellent. I'm sorry, what was your name again?
It's XOCHITL,
It's
but it's pronounced Sochi.
Oh, yes.
And her last name is Flores.
Okay.
FLORES. And she used to be the deputy commissioner in charge of the department, or assistant commissioner in charge of the department that we worked at the department. At the time, it was Department of Planning and Development.
So she's the Cook County Financial Advisor?
She's director of economic development for Cook County.
Director.
And she's a great person. I'd be happy to make the intro or set the meeting with her, you know, or do a Zoom thing. Yeah, big fan. So she's awesome.
I think part of that too, you're right, is to get the word out about that, and that's the most difficult thing, is to get into people's homes and let them know. And so I know Pete is very good, Commissioner Silvestri, and we both are very active on social media. And so that's something that we can promote on social media to say, hey, if you live in or around Portage Park, you know, we're looking for somebody, and that's something we can build out, like, you know, post once a month for 3 months or more frequently, and then we would be able to go and say, please share with your friends and neighbors, and then they, that's like a more grassroots way of.
That would be excellent. Like if I were to send a flyer, when I say community, I don't mean just Portage Park.
Yeah.
My community is very massive. So yeah, so that if I were to send a flyer explaining this initiative and everything, you would be okay with putting it out there?
Yeah, I mean, let's coordinate on it.
Okay. All right, wonderful. I'll send something and you can just give me feedback.
my name is Declan Marinas, and I'm actually Janet's son. And I am the co-founder of Chicago Area Peace Action. It's chapter at UIUC. So Chicago Area Peace Action, which is also known as CAPA, is the affiliate of Peace Action, the largest peace organization in the country. And we're currently working on two campaigns. One is in support of the Clean Energy Jobs Act, and the other one is for the Fair Tax Act. So I'm sure probably most of you know about both of them, but I just built in a summary into my question. So yeah, so CEJA is an ambitious bill for the Illinois General Assembly that would put the state on a path toward transitioning to renewable energy sources while creating a thriving clean energy jobs market, which will particularly benefit workers whose jobs are displaced in the transition, as well as communities of color and low-income communities. Furthermore, the Fair Tax Act would institute a graduated income tax, freeing up $3 billion annually by raising taxes on only the top 3% of homeowners in Illinois and businesses, benefiting the bottom 97% and small businesses during this very difficult time. Do most of you support the Clean Energy Jobs Act and the Fair Tax Act? And are you prepared to formally endorse those?
I'm all for the Clean Energy Act, which we're talking about. My only concern with the Fair Tax Act is that it doesn't put a limit on the taxation level for the lowest income people. I think it would have been a better plan if they would say, we're going to change the tax structure for everybody, except this group is protected, they'll never go off more than the 4.9% that it's now. So I'm dealing with that, and we'll see. I've got a couple more weeks to decide how to finally vote, but that's what we're dealing with. But the first one is absolutely imperative.
Yeah, so, Ann Williams is my state rep, and I talk to her pretty frequently about CEJA.
Well, actually, I'll try to interrupt, but we actually, our group has a lot of changes for Thursday.
Okay, good.
Well, tell me we said what was.
Yeah, great. So that bill is now more than 1,000 pages. They keep adding to it, and I think it is very ambitious, and so I think we all support it. It's going to be a heavy lift for her to get everybody on board, especially people that are south of I-80 in Illinois. I think there's some people that are kind of putting out some information that's not 100% true, so she's working around that. She can explain that more, but yeah, our office is 100% behind CEJA. I do like the fair tax idea. I think my constituents, what I've heard is that if you are, a young couple, and say you're, a couple that's, developing their enterprise and their business, and you both make $100,000 a year, you have a mortgage, you have a child or two, you have considerable debt. Millennials have a lot of debt from undergraduate, and if they got a graduate degree. So that $250,000 threshold, according to people that I've been hearing, they feel like that threshold's a little bit low to go up as high as into the 7%. So what they would like to see is that threshold be a little higher towards the $400,000 level. The second thing I've heard is during some town halls is that people have been concerned that while the numbers right now are, you hold flat at 4.95% and then it goes up to 7%, that there's nothing preventing the General Assembly from changing that in the future, right? So once the constitutional block is removed, our General Assembly can do anything they want. And my response to that really is, if you are elected, the last thing you want to do is raise taxes on people. A lot of people that are elected see that as a death knell for them personally. So I think it's not as likely to happen as people might seem to. I will also say that in the last 2 years, I can see how many people in our community have very strong distrust for those leaders in government. And I think it's part of our responsibility to be leaders who are available, that discuss things with, not just transparency, but discuss things where we're being honest about what the future holds. And what we can see are the negatives and the positives. I myself am for the fair tax because I do think it's important that the people that are making a little bit more money or a lot more money have more of an ability or capacity to pay for the things that we need. So, that's the way I see it. I see what Commissioner Silvestri is saying. And I think that's important too. So I think what our Lieutenant Governor has said is that if it doesn't pass, we're in such a bad state right now that they're just going to increase taxes on everybody. And so if those are the balancing factors where everybody gets a tax increase, or really people with the ability to pay get an increase, I think it lends to having those people who have a greater ability to pay a little bit more.
I was wondering well, I recently did some research and I was told. I've been doing some research and I was told that in an informational session on the fair tax that the passing the Fair Tax Act wouldn't give legislators the ability to increase taxes after even more, but I guess I was wrong in thinking that. I don't know. Most of you probably know more about the actual content within the
Big
bill.
change would be that the Constitution now says that if you're charged 4.95% of your income for tax, and you make $1 million, and I make $100,000, I'm also charged the same rate. The fair tax bill will remove that restriction, as Commissioner Degnen mentioned, that the constitutional block will then be removed. So part of the question is, do we have enough faith in our leaders to make sure that they won't abuse it? And that's what I was saying earlier. I think that there should be a lower threshold in terms of not paying tax or paying less than the rich. Because 4.965% of my income or a billionaire's income is certainly a lot different number.
Yeah. So especially now that in the future, legislators will be increasing taxes on the low numbers of taxes. So a mechanism now that legislators will be increasing taxes after the Fair Tax Act is passed on the low numbers.
But nobody wants to raise taxes. It's not popular for anybody. Because the next election, you'll get reminded, whichever position you take, it's the big issue always. Especially on the northwest side of Chicago.
Right. If I understood it, that if it doesn't pass, there's a possibility that everyone will be taxed.
Right.
So.
They'll increase the flat rate,
Yeah.
4.95. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Can I ask you if you would like to take a break?
No, that's okay.
You're okay? No more drinks or anything? You okay to plow on?
Wow.
You sure? Plow on? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for being involved like that. That's wonderful.
Well, yeah, it's pretty exciting. We're used to fighting against climate crisis, but is it possible that after I actually have a sheet that both of you could sign, and then if you want, I could tailor it.
Well, that's writing.
Sure. I can make it, just for CJA, or maybe, depending on if we both support the agenda fair tax or, CJA, but not the fair tax act. So I can, after this session, if you wouldn't mind signing.
I'll have to read it before I sign it.
Why don't you email it to us?
Yeah.
Just sign.
And then also I can, I'll be sending, and I'll be sending both of you your office email. And if you wouldn't mind passing that on to other commissioners,
No problem.
because we would love to see if the whole county board of commissioners can endorse it. We think that would be a lot of weight, especially since you represent the second most populous county in the country. So
I thought we did.
Yeah, I thought we did.
We'll check
have
with the
a resolution.
secretary.
We'll check.
oh, okay.
We'll check.
So, okay, I do have the other questions, but I know you have a question as well. There's another gentleman that came in, so maybe I'll save this to the end, okay? Who would like to go next?
Why don't you go next?
I know George has.
Are we talking about pay tax now?
We're talking about whatever you want to talk about, really.
I'm against the raising of the state tax the way on the rich people, because it would only bring $3 billion. Okay? Our budget, state budget is around $40 billion. If you pension is $137 billion short. That $3 billion is not enough to cover, let's say that $40 billion, a 2% increase, for next year would probably be around 1.5 billion. The pension is probably growing about $7 billion a year, 5 billion, so that's about 6.5 billion. And that's not even including reducing the $137 billion budget. So, I mean, if you're only going to get $3 billion increase in taxes, and just with inflation of 1.5 billion increase, and pension growth of maybe $5 billion, that you're already short like about $3.5 billion, and that does not even include reducing the $137 billion shortfall in the pension plan. So just raising the tax on the rich is not going to do it. They're going to have to raise it up the next year on everybody.
Well, just for our viewers, let's make it clear that the county's not doing that. It's the state.
No, I understand that.
Just for those that are not with us. But no, thank you, that's a good point.
And another thing with all that is that what's to say that prisoners, after he's out of office, starts to say, I don't know if Florida charges state income tax. Say that he's a resident over there, buy himself a house over there. I know there's some requirements, but he could follow those requirements, and then he wouldn't have to pay any taxes in Illinois. Or you can get Griffin. You can get a house someplace in a state that doesn't pay any tax, do whatever the requirements to stay, so he doesn't have to pay tax for the state of Illinois. The rich people, they have houses all over the place. You know what I'm saying? So I mean, if they're paying state tax in another one that they think that's their residency, just make sure they follow the requirement, and they won't have to pay the state income tax of Illinois.
Sir?
Oh, well, that's some pretty good facts here. I'd just like to get a general idea of, especially with the county, we're talking Cook County, right? And I do employee benefits. I work with small to mid-sized businesses. I've been doing it for 44 years. And it's my understanding right now, the largest employer in the Chicago metropolitan area is the government. Then come the restaurant industry and hospitality. Manufacturing years ago used to be pretty high. Well, what's your aspects on this? Because I don't see the job growth. I've seen businesses, well, now with the COVID, there's quite a few now that are going to be closing. Is the county going to be reducing their employees and cutting back? In private industry, the first thing you do is you look at your payroll. And your
Next
benefits.
Thursday is the president's budget message, so we'll learn all those things at the time. I think there's some anticipated reductions.
The hospital system just reduced about 80, and countywide, we removed about 130 total employees. So in 2010, there was about 26,000 and change employees at the county. And this year, it hovers right around a little under 20,000 employees. And so I think if you look at the two largest percentages of employees at the county, a lot of them are at the jail, and the correction and sheriff's office has a lot of employees. There is a federal consent decree at the jail that requires a certain number of corrections officers per detainee. That detainee, the amount of detainees at the jail has remained flat for the last few years, so it's about 5,500. So that is a non-starter. We can't remove correctional employees. And the policing, there's 2 officers per beat, so it's not like there's a lot of stuff there. I just think holistically.
You're talking about the county employees.
I'm talking about the county employees as a whole, and then the hospital system is another large employer.
Which is hard to make cutbacks in the hospital.
It's very difficult. It takes like 108 days to hire a nurse at this point because our procurement is not great there. So the hospital system, I don't see, or the jail system having significant reductions in payroll. There are some vacancies, and usually that's where they pull from and say, well, you can't now hire that person who has now retired. The problem really is that, and the state has experienced this too, once you start cutting a lot of the payroll, then the job's not getting done, then constituents aren't being served, documents aren't being filed, then it causes like a breakdown and you end up having to pay an outside company to come in on an like emergency contract to do work that the county should have been doing already. And then you pay a premium for these people to come in and do this work. So the
Yeah,
issue
but,
really
automation-
is, are you making sure that you are in every nook and cranny, making sure that the people that are employed are doing their job at 100%?
And the board has been very supportive of automation. I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, automation, I
I don't
mean,
think
let's
there's
face
been
it.
one time that hasn't improved it.
Yeah, the last recession we had, companies found they could do a lot more with a lot less employees. But the government seems just getting a little bit bigger and bigger. And of course, it's a good payroll base for a lot of political favors.
Well, I think that may have been more true in the past, but even like now, the recorder of deeds office and the clerk's office have merged, and they have found some savings there long term.
Which is good.
So I think that was, but I see, I worked at the state for 5 years, and I will say, like, I just see a lot of people walking around not doing a lot. And, I've only worked at the county for 2 years, and there's still more for me to learn there. But I just don't know that you're going to see a lot of reduction in payroll. That really, the whole idea of bloated government in the 80s and 90s was true. And I think there's been a definite response to that. I just don't know that there's a lot of savings in payroll at this point.
Well, what do you think the average salary is of a county worker?
That's a great question.
Now we have to throw in the pension and the health.
Yeah.
Because I've seen, even the states, I've reviewed some contributions for state health insurance. I was like, fell out of my chair. I had somebody in their 50s, which in Affordable Care Act, they'd be paying probably about $2,000 a month in premium. Their contribution, $120 a month.
I mean, healthcare is a whole nother conversation.
Yeah, no, I know.
We address that
And
nationally.
I'm just voicing some of my frustration working in this industry for a lot of years with businesses.
Understood, sir.
Because back in the 80s, we got away from defined benefit pensions. We went to defined contributions private because you have to keep those numbers on your, on your corporate books. And that's when 401ks blossomed and everything else. But it seems like we're having a rough time in this state and the city to get away from defined benefit pensions, which are pretty unaffordable.
Well, a lot of that is negotiated in new contracts.
Oh yeah, no ways about it. But
But they shouldn't be doing that, negotiate if they don't have the money to pay.
I mean, just simple math. To pay somebody $120,000 a year pension takes a lot of assets. So just sad because I love the city and I love the state. But financially, the numbers aren't looking too good.
Can I ask you another question?
Oh, okay, yes, I do. George has a question as well. Do you want to ask your question now? Let him in. Sorry.
Yeah.
No, I just have the community questions now, so why don't you go ahead and first ask yours? Yeah.
Well, this might have been touched on some, but because there's a stalemate in Washington over the Bureaus Act, we're going to get more stimulus into the municipal governments, into the states. What's the plan of the county? Is it to cut services, raise taxes? The county's done much better than the city. The budget shortfall is much less. And plus
There have been employee cutbacks for the last 10 years. And there's been raises in fees and not taxes so much as raises in fees. The real estate taxes have gone up since 1990. So that's what we're looking at. And we'll get the full message on Thursday. The president's making a budget message on Thursday. So you can answer that question better on Thursday. But I do think there's going to be a little bit of combination of raising taxes. That hasn't really been talked about, but it may come up because our budget has to be approved before February. It's usually approved before January. And it's just starting now with the presentation, so it's a little while left.
do you have any flexibility to push the announcement date depending on the election?
Yes, it has to be approved by the last day of February. So anytime between now and February, yes. So yes, she could have waited, but for some reason she wants to do it now. She wants to get the process moving. And we never count on money until we get it. You know, people talk about the marijuana proceeds and the legalized gambling proceeds, but we haven't budgeted for that until July because that's when the money starts coming.
So I had a call with her and I asked her if she would be, I had heard that there was some commissioners who really wanted to push back the budget from November 30th towards February. And I said, I understand that you're warming to this idea. And she said, absolutely not. I am not warming to it.
Right.
She said, I don't, you know, we need to pass the budget. If we get that federal stimulus money, we can spend it. But I can't count on it. And even if the election happens and there is a change in that administration, it's going to take Congress a while to negotiate, and the Senate to, you know, to pass that and then to distribute that money. And her administration, Tony Preckwinkle's administration, from what I understand, feels like the likelihood of that happening before a budget's passed is like minimal. So we should just pass the budget. You know, it can be a budget that's going to, there was $219 million budget gap. They can find a way to resolve that. We can pass it, and if that money comes through, you know, then we can spend it as we see fit then.
Yes.
Indeed we are.
Anything below the state's department. So counties, villages, cities. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I will then, if it's okay, if everyone is all right, then return no questions. You're okay? Too many. I'm going to ask these questions here. If you could just comment on them if you feel to, and then I will ask the participants to contact you at your email for any follow-up if they have follow-up questions. Does that sound okay?
Sure.
All right, great. All right, so the first one is from Paula C. Is it possible for the city to create an emotional support program for children during this isolating time of pandemic? So I think
That's a question from the alderman.
For the alderman?
She said, she asked if the city could do that, right?
Yeah, I don't know if she meant, you know, I think what, you did say the same thing. I don't know if she meant like, yeah, I know. Yeah, I don't know.
CPS,
Yeah.
even if you're at a private school, CPS is required to give you services, so you can go to, if your child is at CPS, you can go in and they should have a counselor there in order for you to talk with them about those types of programs independently of each separate school. So I know when talking to the Chicago Teachers Union, one of the things that they had talked about was not only making sure that as kids go back to school, things are clean, that each the HIPAA filters are changed regularly, but that there is emotional support services for kids. So I think that would be a good conversation to have with our CPS leaders.
Okay, very good. Okay, the next one is from Jose G. Minorities are the hardest hit economically with COVID. Can a website be created with listings of temporary or day jobs where they can find work to get them through the week? Maybe employers can call in and give a listing of work they may have for a few hours or something.
Well, that would probably fall under the Bureau of Economic Development, the social flores that we talked about earlier.
Okay,
So that'd be a good question for her. There's no plan to do that at this point, though.
okay. So, so I will forward her email to
Social.
I thought that was an interesting one, you know, because sometimes people have just like 4 hours of work, helping move, you know, inventory or something, maybe, you know, they don't want to have somebody on the payroll. I think that's not. This is from Elizabeth, hey, is there any protection for children during this stressful time? Are there social workers that make home visits?
Again, that would be a CPS issue to the public schools.
They would handle like,
They'd have to call either their local school or the administration to find out what kind of programs are available in their area.
Okay. So even for like the home visit? Yeah.
I would think so, yes.
All right, from Lori, in your personal opinion, is there anything that the city or county can do to help us? So this is very open and like, I think what she was just saying was, are there thoughts going through your mind? We should be doing this or we should be doing that. Is there anything?
I think there's got to be a better way to do a better job in terms of different governments and trying to coordinate things together. Environmental Protection Commission, that would be a real leader on your time. We have a city EPA, we have a county EPA.
Sorry, it's kind of loud.
Can you hear me back there?
Are you able to?
Yeah, if you can just, speak up a little.
I was saying that I think we can do a better job of working with other local governments to get things done, so that we're not all repeating each other's work. I think that's one area that and it started because we're working with the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District more. They utilize certain our services, they pay us for it, which is a good thing, rather than starting their own new program. For example, they share the Inspector General with us, and we get paid for that. So it helps the county coffers too. We need to do more of that, I think. We're looking at providing insurance through a pool with the city and the park district and the school district, but it hasn't come to fruition yet. And we also do purchasing through different groups like that. If the school system, for example, gets a contract for cars, and we need cars, we can piggyback on their contract and then cars. And that saves money in terms of procurement, it saves money because it's a lower price because you're buying more vehicles. Just an example.
So I think with the housing for right now for COVID, the county got $429 million from the federal government in funds for COVID-related response. So I know that the county just put out basically $70 million in support for the surrounding municipalities, and there was just another $50 million that was given out for small business support and for mortgage and rent payment support. So if you met a certain financial threshold, you put in an application, if you met that minimum criteria, then you would get a check. So it was directly money that flowed through from the federal government to the county that was given to municipalities around the city. The city had their own independent CARES Act funding bucket, and they did the same kind of program for people inside the city. So that money was, was distributed throughout the county and the city for family-supported, family-supported care, as well as small business. So I guess that is a very open-ended question. I would be interested in hearing more about what that person is struggling with and look for support.
Right. I think she just wanted a personal view of anything that you felt was, could be done better.
Well, I will say I'm really excited to say that we've been working on this program with my office. I don't know if I've shared this with you yet, but I got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of emails, maybe 1,000 emails, asking me to defund the Chicago Police Department. Right? So I can't do that. I'm not on city council. I think another commissioner says the county operates kind of like it's this stealth government layer. A lot of people know who their aldermen are or their mayors if you live in the suburbs. And a lot of people know that we have a general assembly that works for the state. So I feel like a lot of people don't recognize that you have elected representation at the county level of government, that there is a board, that we have a $6.2 billion budget, and that we have all of these services that are available. And so with that money, and these emails that we got for defund the police and Black Lives Matter, or an alternative, fund the police, we care about our police. I responded to each one of those emails, but what really came out of it is that many municipalities in Denver and west of Denver have crisis intervention response teams. So think of it as like a stool. In Cook County, we have 3 legs to that stool. We have fire, we have paramedic, and we have police. So a lot of more along the eastern and western seaboard, they have a 4th leg to that stool, which is crisis response. So a team goes out to plain clothes. They don't have a firearm. They're not bulletproof vested up. They don't have all that investment technology that they're carrying around all the time. And that fourth leg of the stool goes out with one EMT and one crisis intervention specialist. And they respond to social, behavioral, and mental health issues, as well as people in the unhoused community and people who have suffered overdoses. So like in Denver, there's a really big unhoused community. In Oakland, California, there's a really big unhoused community. In Cook County, suburban Cook County, we don't have a huge unhoused community, but we have a very large community that suffers from overdoses and mental and behavioral health. So instead of sending the police out, who don't want to necessarily be doing that job, we have this fourth leg of the stool, we fund that fourth leg, and then we do not pull those people into our criminal justice system. So we save money that way, those people get a better response, and we can also capture data. But it's kind of more of an evolved way of thinking about the way that we, as a government, address our constituency in the best way, not just like the way that it's always been done. So I talked to Tom Starr, who was our sheriff, and I said, what do you think about this? And he said, it's a great idea. Please don't cut my funding to do it. So we had thought, how do we fund this program? And one of the thoughts that came up was, there's fees that we charge for certain things, and then there's small other tobacco product taxes that are very low, like on vape pens or something. I don't know. We'll figure it out. But the long story is that is a really good, I think, response to people who are in crisis, people who are suffering, not wanting to necessarily see the police and get into the criminal justice system but need relief. And we can also take those people who really have serious mental and behavioral health problems, make sure that we find them permanent housing, and make sure that they are then on Social Security disability, which is funded by the federal government, to make sure that we're not spending county money on putting them in a jail, so that we're not coming from our revenue stream. We're relying on the federal government, who we all pay taxes to, and who should be funding these things to begin with.
And I think what's key there is that where some people want to take the stool and cut one of the legs off to replace it with a new leg, this is good discussion that the Commissioner Degnen just led, really talks about adding a leg, so that the stool has four legs. If you need a cop, you need a cop. If you need a crisis worker, you need a crisis worker.
Yeah.
You need a paramedic, you need a paramedic. They're all public safety, but they're all different.
Different skill sets.
Right, of course.
So,
And the person who they're responding to, you have no idea what you're going to be eventually to get them. So they have to be available in all different aspects. Don't want the cop that don't want to show up when they're having a heart attack.
there's a place and a time for everyone. But the money that we received for COVID could not be used to fix another.
The COVID was money that was expended directly as a result of the pandemic. So,
Okay, so this would not be considered.
and the money's also been distributed besides the suburban municipalities. It's not going to library districts and park districts and fire protection districts too. So it's being spread out. Townships too, suburban townships. And as Commissioner Degnen said, similar amounts of money are going to the city.
I think that's a great idea. I think both of those ideas are really good. You both came up with really good things that should be hopefully effect. Okay, so this next one is from Chloe B. What can be done to add more small community-centered events like neighborhood festivals and block parties safely, or other friendly events during and after COVID? So she's looking for some fun.
She's looking for what?
For fun.
For fun or funds?
Fun, no fun.
Fun.
Good time.
You don't want the government to tell you how to have fun.
I was gonna say, that's not
You want to have your own fun without the government interfering in that.
But she's looking for anything that can be.
I think the alderman offices have a list of those types of things, don't they? Most of my district is suburban, so I'm trying to remember if the city part of my district, if they have that information available.
They do. So
It's a process.
there's a festival, like from block parties to small street festivals to larger community festivals, even like Lollapalooza. And that's listed out by the cities, one of their departments. It's a list that's got hundreds and hundreds of events on there.
Yeah.
So really, if you just want to look at that list, there's a lot of it. But during COVID, I mean,
Oh, right,
it's just not gonna happen.
right.
I'm sorry.
I know, people are kind of like, you see them scrambling during Halloween. Me personally are just not that great at not giving out anything. It's like, next year, forget about it this year, because it's just, but there are people that are still determined to try. Of course, they probably haven't been. I know Chloe lives a couple of blocks south of here. I think maybe what she was thinking is that generally speaking, the northwest side is pretty sparse when it comes to community activities. You know, fun street fairs and festivals, even outside of COVID times. It's kind of,
Well, you know, the Edison Park neighborhood, the Norwood Park neighborhood on the far northwest side,
Yeah.
which is in my district, they're pretty active. I mean, they have a lot of block parties and festivals. They used to have 2 parades a year, St. Patrick's Day and the other one was at the end of the summer. So, I mean, they might want to contact those people and see what they've got going. Because it's, you know, it's not far in similar neighborhoods. So
okay.
it's a similar type of enjoyment and entertainment.
What I'd also encourage Chloe to do is that there is a Dunning Reed conservation area that's slightly west of here.
Right.
And I know that there's been a lot of discussion locally about farm to table and using local areas to create community gardens. And so she's really interested in a collaborative experience that would be fun. I think if she's a young person, she wants to assemble like a community garden where people can plant tomatoes and zucchinis and whatever. It gets people together. You can socially distance provided your plots are farther away.
Right.
And I think I've heard people say that there's an area in the Dunning Reed Conservation Area that you might be able to use for a community garden.
Okay.
But that's something that the community can come together on. These plots that are like 6 by 4, and that families can get together every Saturday and, you know, tend to those community plots. And then they pull the tomatoes and then they can teach, you know, their kids or their families about organic farming. I don't know. It just seems like a cool thing that's kind of happening more frequently.
That sounds great. So in other words though, like when you see other areas that have their parades and have their block parties and everything.
Well, not this year.
Not this year. But it's the people of the community that are putting them
Right.
together.
Well, in some cases, it's a chamber of commerce. In some cases, it's community groups.
Okay.
Or George.
I know, George, what are you
Giving all this work to
doing?
the chamber.
George!
George, we need another carnival.
Yeah,
Usually in the summer, the churches have carnivals.
Yep.
There's always some activity. And you can get through your community churches. So,
Very good point.
Excellent. Not church like that.
I think I've got it. Okay, so, 2 more. This is from Carmen T. We aren't going to get any resolve on the stimulus until after the election. Food insecurity is growing. Is there any way that a program could be created that would reach out to corporations or private organizations for monetary assistance? So,
I think we have several food depositories that do that now. They're not government funded, they're privately funded. But the Chicago Food Depository, for example, is very active in what you're talking about. There's the Northern Illinois Food Bank that they have I don't know why they were in Aurora, but they have a big distribution in Aurora. So that person I want to contact the food depositories to see what type of programs they have available. And they're almost totally funded by private groups.
they are.
The government doesn't fund them at all, unless the feds do. I don't think they do.
And so I can give you the names of several on the northwest side. There's the Joint Hands Foods Food Pantry, which is now partly a community church.
Yeah.
Those
Those are all
are
private.
Pancho's, there's St. Cyprian's Medical Food Pantry, just wasn't there. It's there's the Living Park Community Food Pantry, which it's just east of West. So and they get a bunch of, they get stuff from Jewel and Oscar and donations. They also get quite a bit of food for those donations. That's the big one in the area.
Okay, so that's actually happening where private organizations, corporations are being approached and asked to help.
Yeah, I mean, I get stuff in mail all the time, I made it, this is like with most of the mail that we get at home is from charities. if you make a donation one time, they got you on the list, and they probably sell a list. We made a donation to the ASPCA, and I'm doing stuff with every possible animal, the World Wildlife Federation, the Humane Society. So it's the same thing with food pantries. If you make a donation, you're gonna get a lot of.
Okay, so if they're not run by the city, state, federal, whatever, as far as like,
Foundations.
okay, as far as like, identification, that, this is just something a little bit I was curious about when we had our food drive, that, people were telling me they had to show some sort of driver's license in order to come and get some supplies. They were saying that, they weren't able to get, baby formula or diapers at these places. But that's all privately run, so if there's stipulation.
Sometimes they have boundaries, they have a geographic area they want to serve. I think what they're concerned about is people coming from the suburbs, or people coming from the far south side. I mean, in the case of the places I mentioned, they don't have any limitations. If you come there, you don't have to show anything. But I know sometimes when the wards have shredding and recycling, electronic recycling days, they just want people from the wards. They don't want people from the wards. So, your capacity thing, how much do you have?
Well, I'll say for the shredding and recycling events, I've done 4 of those so far in like the last 5 months. We just want people to come. Like, we don't want to be having 20 of us sitting there waiting and having like, then we feel like the event's been a failure if nobody comes. We just want people to come because we have places for the trucks and everybody's there, and we love seeing everybody, and it makes us feel like we have accomplished something. So as long as we're getting in the paper and getting people to drop off their recycling, I know for our part, we're just excited to have people participate.
Do you know where you can drop off electronics, batteries and all that?
I would encourage everybody to look at our social media posts for Commissioners Degnen.com or on Instagram and Twitter, and we regularly have events. So I cannot tell you right now
when batteries and all that stuff.
We take electronics, we
great.
take TVs, we take all of that stuff. We take, and usually there's a shredding event with paper.
Great.
All of the paper that you have, like your social security number on it, or your bills that you don't want to put in the trash.
Okay.
Paper ones are very popular.
Yeah, but you're right.
What was it?
Paper ones are very popular.
Yeah, but I mean, like batteries, they just kind of, we have like a wall that's just, they keep building up.
You can go online, you can Google, where do I do a battery drop off? I know there's one at the Thompson Center for sure.
There are some in the suburbs too, but I know one recently closed, so I have to look it up again.
And we have drug take back events, so the sheriff will come out with like a big mailbox kind of looking thing, and you just throw in all of any of the drugs that you have, any prescription drugs that are, extra or that you didn't use. Some people I know they had cancer and they didn't finish, they didn't need to finish, so they had some left over and they didn't want to put it down the toilet because that's our water supply.
Right.
So we have that along with them.
Excellent. Very good to know. Okay. And the last question from Mary J. She's in Dunning. I know her as well. So during this pandemic, many women are finding it necessary to leave the workforce and remain at home to care for children. Is there any service that can be financed by the county or developed by the community on a volunteer cooperative basis where children can be safely cared for at no cost, in or outside the home? And this I'm sure we're all aware of how many women have left the workforce.
There's no such program at this time.
No.
To reimburse or to help fund such a program. There's no such discussion of that at this point. I haven't heard of it.
Is there anything that can help women right now? I mean, because they really, they're leaving in droves. And, is there any kind of assistance that they can get, even if they try to work at home? It's so difficult, but.
We know who would have an answer to that. It would be the Women's Business Development Center.
Okay.
They're downtown. They do a lot of wonderful things for a lot of people. I don't know if they specifically have a program that you described, but certainly something to look at.
Would that be with the commissioner?
That's a private enterprise.
That would be for private, that would be.
Basically promotes programs for women.
So right up there, Alan.
Okay, but I'm saying this would not be something that the commissioners would look at.
I'm not sure it's in our mission for the things that we are required to do. There's not enough money to do what we're supposed to do right now, so it's kind of hard to add more to that at this time.
I think to get a program up and running where you would be able to hire people in order to find a place care for people socially distant, I think that would take more than a year, and I think we'll be over COVID by that point. Because procurement takes time, program development takes time, finding people with the knowledge and expertise to lead and administer that kind of program. So, I'm a mom, I have a 14-year-old, it's times like this my husband works, and, I have to leave him for a couple hours to go do different things from time to time. And it's hard because making sure he's online and participating in his classes, and he has ADHD, so he's more inclined to be distracted. It's impossible. It is an impossible ask to say, I want you to have a full-time job, and then make sure that you're caring for your family, and make sure that you're following all COVID restrictions, while having your full-time job. I mean, as a mom, there's no way I can pay 100% attention to him and his online learning and to a full-time position. It's just not possible. And it's a terrible burden on a parent to feel like you're not giving 100% to your family. And as somebody who loves to work, it's a burden realizing that you can't spend 100% of your time doing what you love and you feel like you're good at. So I think we just all need to acknowledge that this time just stinks and that it's going to be over. And hopefully we'll look in the rearview mirror and say, wow, I'm stronger for doing all that good work. And I recognize that I've made me really sad.
And you don't think, sorry, but while you were speaking, a thought came into my mind too, about you don't think something like the libraries, the public libraries, could be set up where they could have like children for 4-hour time periods. They're so large, and where they could come and read a book. You have librarians there, kind of. That's too crazy of an idea, something like that.
I mean, it's an interesting idea. I mean, we're talking about funding it and staffing it, and
well, you've got the library staff there. And you've got the space.
Right. So it'd be a good discussion with the library, but I don't think they'd be totally open to extend the program as much as you're talking about, because we assume those library employees are doing something already, right? So if you had another element to that, it might be difficult. I don't know the answer to that. It's certainly a great idea to have programs like that, of course. My mother worked, but grandma lived with us, so it was easy. It wasn't easy, but it was easier.
All right. Well, I think those are all my questions that I have for the community. I took notes. I will see that they get, any of those other responses as well. But they're going to be watching the film. And then also, I will forward the email also to social. So she can then herself.
Yeah, and we're at District 12 at cookcountyil.gov. If you have any questions for us, we're happy to respond. If you need any services, that's what we're here for. And like I said, I encourage you to follow us on social media because we do a lot of events. We have a lot going on, and it's nice to see people there and know that they're feeling served.
And I would ditto that. Mine's petersilvestri.com. So we have the same Facebook. There's also on Facebook, so you want to look at those things too. So we're happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, good to see you guys.
Amazing job. Your interest. Sorry if we got a little cold.
No,
I'm not always